Good morning, everybody. How's it going today? Are you awake? That stuff coming from the sky, that is rain. It's not tears. It's not, for you Californians, it's rain. And for those not from California, that's just sad is what it is. So I want to welcome everybody. My name's Paul Kent, and I'm the GM for Macworld and MacIT. I don't know, I've met many of you, but I want to welcome everybody and thank you for being with us today. We got an amazing conference for you. About 450 people are pre-registered, so we have a really interesting collection of network professionals from around the country, around the world actually, who are going to be participating with us. And before I introduce you to this August group, I want to tell you just a few things. One is the lay of the land. So this obviously is the big room. This is where our general sessions will be. We'll get started here in the morning. Most of today is in here. And then down across the hall is where the breakout rooms are, and you'll have a number of sessions. Hopefully you've all downloaded the MacIT app. That'll help you a lot understand what sessions are where and when. It's free and it's available on the App Store right now, so I encourage you to grab it if you can. I want to tell you a little bit about something interesting that we're doing this year. Well, actually, first thing I want to do is I want to tell you about the general session. So after we get done with the introductions and the game plan from the advisory group, then we've got a special general session. My friend John Gallant has brought in three doers and thinkers about the IT world to give you kind of a perspective about Apple and the world of IT. And then our own industry rock star, Chip Pearson from Jamf, will be doing another very you didn't know IT work could be inspirational, but Chip gets up here and really drives home the power and the value that we are all adding to the places where we work. And so I hope you'll enjoy that again. I want to thank our sponsors, actually, before we get going here. Jamf and Code 42, of course. But we also have AirWatch, Absolute Software, Adobe, Cososis, ESET, Lantronix, Parallels, and Printer Logic. They'll all be, we have a reception for you at the end of the day today. I know this first day is really, really long. Right next door at the end of the day, and also at our lunch break from 12 to 2, all the sponsors will be there, so there's some product viewing for you to get to know the manufacturers and the developers and find out if their tools are right for your organization. So I encourage you to visit all of them. Really, this event, you guys are the heart and soul of it, but having these sponsors add a product flair to it and support it financially is part of what helps us put it on here in San Francisco. So I want to thank all the sponsors. And then I want to talk about the last thing that we're going to do. So has anybody in the room ever participated in an unconference before? One. So, what this means, an unconference, we're actually going to turn the cameras around onto you guys, so to speak. An unconference is a way where we can harness the intelligence and the thoughts of the attendee base. So much of what people always tell us the value of these events are the interactions with other people who are doing similar things. So an unconference is an organized, semi-organized event where you guys will be able to participate in a certain topic, brainstorm for about an hour, and then someone from the topic that you are participating with is going to talk for 5 minutes about what you found of interest. So let me back up here. So we're going to start by figuring out what topics are going to be. So like I said, we're turning around to you guys. The way we're going to choose the topics is that if you guys could tweet, could you put up that welcome slide, please? If you guys could tweet the topics that you'd like to see public discussions about amongst your peers here, tweet it to MacIT Unconference, hashtag MacIT Unconference, and we'll collect all those, and then we'll take a look at them, and the most common ones we'll select to be the topics. Then, on Friday, you'll walk into the room, and the selected topics, there'll be a facilitator at each table. You'll have a few minutes to walk around and see what the topics are, and you'll pick what topic you want to participate in. Then you'll have about an hour to dive into that topic, and there'll be some guidelines to help you start the conversation, things that are of interest to professionals who are interested in that particular topic. So, and then each table will have a couple of deliverables, and at the end of the session, each table will present what they've decided is what needs to be spoken about to this group. So it might be future directions for MacIT. It might be great resources that you guys are recommending to help people learn more about it. We'll give you some guidelines, but it's an open discussion. That's why it's called an unconference. It's a loose format, and you guys will come back and you'll be presenting to your peers here and tell everybody what you think is important. It might be security. It could be anything. So please tweet your topics starting now. We're going to take these until tomorrow. And the more we get, the better. And then the group will go through, and we'll take the final ones. Like I said, you'll walk into the room on Friday, and this is how we're going to end MacIT, is with this unconference session, where it is the collected intelligence of all the people who are participating with us here. So hopefully that sounds good to you. These are a lot of fun. They're very informative. There's so much brain power in the room here. We want to harness it and tap it for everybody's greater good. So that's what we're going to be doing to end the conference. With that said, I'd like to turn over the microphone to our program committee. You know many of these people. They've worked incredibly hard for us to put on, I think, the best MacIT ever. I think the agenda that we have here is really extraordinary. The speakers that we have are really extraordinary. You're going to get a lot out of it. But to help you kind of plot your path through all of the content that we have, we started this last year as a way to kind of give you some signposts amongst all of these sessions and all these speakers, some signposts so you guys can see what they recommend relative to their particular areas of discipline, the content that they've helped develop for you. So I'm going to turn it over to our conference chair. Everybody please welcome Dan O'Donnell. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. So hello, welcome to MacIT Conference 2014. I'm Dan O'Donnell. I do InfoSec. That's one of my favorite tracks or topics this year. This time last year, actually last year in January, we didn't have some of the things that happened a little later, like Mac-specific exploits. We didn't have APT. We didn't have the target breach. We didn't have one of the other big things that happened in the middle of the year last year. So InfoSec is still one of my big favorites, and it's one of the things that we're going to have some sessions this year on. My other favorite is IPv6. I know that IPv6 is a little bit like nuclear fusion energy. It's right around the corner, and we're going to have it real soon. But yeah, I do believe in science fiction and fantasy, and we are running out of IP addresses, and we're getting the Internet of Things, which is going to be millions, billions more IP addresses. So we will have IPv6, so we've got a couple of sessions on that. The other speakers here will talk about their favorites. I want to reiterate what Paul said about the unconference. That is, there's nothing really particularly special about those of us up here that differentiates us from everybody who's sitting down that I can't see because of the lights. That is, we're all Mac professionals here. So what we see the unconference as being is a way to crowdsource, leverage your expertise to think of problems and solutions that we may not have thought of, so that we can all come together in the community and come up with perhaps better solutions. So I'd encourage you to tweet your ideas to the hashtag that Paul just gave you. We'll incorporate them on Friday and continue the discussion. So, Kevin?
So the theme that I kind of always go back to, but I always want people to focus on, is how there's a separation between traditional IT and what Apple's goals are. And I think for those of you who are new into managing the Apple platform, and that you have this traditional concept of what IT means, which is control and security, and those are all valid things, but you have to realize that Apple as a company has a goal that's different than that. Their goal is to delight and please the customer, right? That's their goal. Aside from making money, is to make users happy and to give them the best experience that they can give the user. And if you understand that that really truly is their goal, then it makes a lot more sense the decisions that Apple makes when they start introducing IT product or product for management. So if you look at last month, for example, Apple introduced 3 new services. One's called the Device Enrollment Program. That's a service that lets the user be the first person to touch that device and still have IT manage it. So yes, that's incredibly convenient for you, but the goal of that feature is so it's the user who experiences that first-time setup, not you as the IT person. Product number 2 they announced was the Volume Purchase Program update for managed app deployment. And this is an update to something that existed, but the way that they've architected it is that the user gets granted these apps. And it's the user's Apple ID that gets granted permission to have the apps, not your Apple ID. And then the last program is for those of us in education, Apple ID for kids under 13, so that as a school district, you can, with parental consent, get Apple IDs for little kids. But again, that's user-focused. These are features for the user that IT takes advantage of. So when you look at these new products, and just as you're going through the week, and you try to think about, well, why is Apple making that decision? Think about it from Apple's point of view, which is that the user comes first, not that IT comes first. And I know sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow, especially for those of us who are just getting into the Apple way of doing things. But if you kind of understand that, that's very important. And you have to realize that you're using a product where that is their religion. Apple's religion is the user's the most important thing. So understanding that really goes a long way to getting into why Apple does the way that the things the way that they do. Now I want to introduce our newest member to the MacIT committee. We've finally gone international this year with Duncan McCracken, and I'll let you figure out where he's from.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to keep it simple because that's in line with what I would like to talk about, which is the IT game is changing, and vendors are changing the way they do things. You need to get on board with this. And as an IT professional, if you focus on keeping your life simple and following the user experience for the vendors, that the vendors are trying to give to the users, like Kevin was saying with what Apple are doing already, you'll find that your job gets different. Not worse, not obsolete, but different. You'll start wanting to do different things with your job or with your IT. For example, you can start moving support off to, out to vendors rather than solving and troubleshooting problems yourself, because they have support resources and infrastructure to handle all of those things. So what you can do from that is start learning new things and applying that knowledge into building on what's there and adjusting the way you work to make your life easier and simpler. Because a simpler system has less things to go wrong, and that's a really, really good mandate to go with. We've got a lot of smart people who are presenting at this conference this year, and they've all done some very clever things, and their focus is on achieving the work. Rather than reinventing the wheel, you guys should be building on what they do. So pay attention to what they've done and move on from there. Take things to the next level. Start innovating, not imitating. Eric.
Thanks, Duncan. My name's Eric Dreyer, and again, I'd like to welcome you again to MacIT. Really excited for all the content that we have here. Kevin and I are doing an all-day workshop on Saturday on Apple deployment, and it's going to focus on iOS. I still have a lot of love for the Mac world, though. Mac World, MacIT, that's the name of this conference right now. It's got the Mac at the center, although all the excitement seems to be on iOS. And I'm excited about the sessions that we have about iOS, about the deployment the DEP program, about managing Apple IDs. I'm also excited about the OS X sessions that we have. We've got a session on dtrace today. Tomorrow we've got Brendan Gregg talking about the use case and how to interrogate what's going on with your system, what's going wrong before you need to whip out the tools to do some deep inspection of OS X and its processes. Charles Edge is talking about scripting with OS X Server. I have a particular love for OS X Server, as I still have a book about OS X Server. And how do I, Paul said that we're going to name our favorites, and it feels disloyal to name any one session without naming the others. I'm really excited about the iBeacon stuff that's coming out, and how we've got a treasure hunt for Macworld that involves iBeacons, and Tim Perfett's going to talk about that in one of our MacIT sessions. And 3D printing, and this is still a really exciting field to be in. So those are some of the highlights, some of my favorites, without being disloyal to the rest of the sessions. So I want to invite John Welch to come up next and share with you some of his thoughts.
Wow, you can actually see from up here. Who here agrees with me that Duncan must be from Maine? Pardon? Yeah. So I've always had kind of a particular thing for network monitoring. Mostly because I realized it was kind of cool when someone called in saying that they couldn't get on a server when you said, yes, I know it's about fixed. You know, and you're like that 5-10 minutes ahead of the support calls and people realizing their stuff doesn't work. That kind of led me to started getting into server virtualization, because when people, like, I work for an advertising company, we have to test web pages on all sorts of interesting things, like, you know, IE7. We finally have been able to tell people we don't care about IE6. That happened last year. But it was really nice to, instead of having to find hardware and install, you know, to just, you know, spin up a VM, and its whole purpose in life is to run IE7. That's all it has to do. But you don't care because, you know, you're not spending hardware money on that. You've already got the license for the OS, and so you just leave it alone. And that kind of wrapped me around to the why of all this. And I mean, a lot of the stuff here is awesome, and the things that people are going to talk about is really cool and that. But at the end of the day, it's all here for the people using it. You know, for the designers, for the receptionists, for the accountants. You know, that's what all this is here for. And a lot of what I've started to do the last few years of my career is also start getting, when vendors are giving us software that is horrible to use, that is torturing people, when you're, you know, when it takes you, you know, when you're perpetually trying to work around weird things like print drivers that don't work and things like that. And instead of, I've less and less worked around those myself and started basically jumping down vendor throats like, you have to make this better to use. You know, I'm paying you money for this, and I'm not paying you a small amount of money. You don't get to make this suck anymore. And we're kind of the only people who can really do that in a useful way, because we understand both sides of the equation. We understand the people who just want to get work done. They don't want to have to know, you know, they want to be able to drive their car without having to know how to rebuild the engine. And so, and then on the other side, we understand the technical aspects of it well enough to actually tell the vendors very specifically what they need to fix and how they need to fix it, and even give them ideas in some cases. And so when you're in all the sessions and you're learning all this stuff and picking up tools and techniques and that, try to keep in mind how to make it better for the people actually using all the computers that you're in charge of. Nadine.
I love the game of musical chairs that we have to play, because this is really a 3-person stage and we've stuffed 7 of us on here. Which actually sounds a lot like IT, doesn't it? We're always trying to fit 7 people's worth of stuff into 3 people. Huh, interesting. My experience is in enterprise IT and watching how we as MacIT have been able to fit into this. And as someone who has always worked for enterprise software companies, I have to say, I'm sorry for all of the times that we haven't been doing the right thing. MacIT is at the forefront of enterprise IT today because we as MacIT have been the people who have been trying to make our environments more heterogeneous. We have been at the forefront of tweaking Active Directory to get it to work with something that isn't Win95. We're the ones who have been troubleshooting all of those funky email problems because whoever set up the server thought that the only thing that was connecting to it was Outlook on Win95. That's where we've always been, and today we're going even further, and we're set up to be the people to bring your own device. We're set up to make our environments more heterogeneous, and we're the ones who already know how to move to the cloud because we've been doing it internally already. There's so much this week about both the nuts and bolts of being MacIT, as well as going beyond MacIT and being iOS IT, being bring your own device IT, being cloud IT. And that's what I'm excited for this week. So now let me hand over to Ben.
Always think outside the box there. Yes, think different.
I have a question for you, just so I know who we've got here. How many people here are in charge of managing or administrating other people's devices and computers? Great. So we've got a large percentage of the people here who have that responsibility. How many people here have been given a requirement, whether it was something that was built into your environment, just because this is the way we did things and this is the requirement, something along the lines of our corporate requirements say we must run antivirus on all of our devices. How many people here have gotten antivirus to run on an iOS device? So here's the thing that I ask you. Stop taking a look at these requirements just as, I need to install this, I need to do that, but to really look at it and say, why am I doing this? Why is this a requirement? Not, this is the requirement, but why? Keep asking yourself, why? Things are changing. And as Nadine said, we've gotten comfortable to do things a certain way. And we need to break free of that, reevaluate, because things are very different than the way that they used to be. I was very lucky last night to have dinner with my friend Phil Remiger, who's in the back. He's going to be speaking on IPv6. And I can actually say there's some hotel doormen who now know probably more about IPv6 than they ever really expected to know, because last night after dinner we sat in the hotel lobby and talked about IPv6 for loudly and for quite a long time. It was fascinating. But one of the things that we talked about was network security and how things are even changing with network security, where we tend to think of the network itself as something we need to protect and protect and protect because that's what we do and it just makes sense. We should protect the network. But as I mentioned 2 years ago well, not this stage, but a stage very similar to this, I said, stop thinking about that stuff and think about why you're doing that. And the reason why you're doing that is typically you want to protect the data. So not so much how do we do something, but why are we doing it, and then redefine the how. So you want to really think, do I need to layer so much security on something that maybe ultimately it doesn't matter? Maybe I have to look at my security model in a different fashion to make it appropriate for today's world, for today's devices, and the way that people want to use their devices. Because the days of the Windows 95 sitting on somebody's desk on a white box on the world's most heinous 15-inch CRT monitor, slightly burned in, and one corner a little blurry, those days are gone. I mean, it still exists in patches here and there. I mean, we're just finally getting rid of XP, right? Maybe. Yes, we would like to think that. So just once again, I don't want to take up any more time, but the issue that I really ask you to do is to review the whys, really dig into that, and try to understand why you're doing it, because this is a wonderful time right now. We've got new tools, we've got new methods, we've got different things coming around, and we don't have to be tied to the way it had always been. So, everybody willing to do that? Wonderful. Thank you very much, and I'm going to hand this back to Dan O'Donnell.
Thanks, Ben. I'm going to plug my session also. It's still in InfoSec. How many people here have a PGP fingerprint, a PGP key, understand PGP? Well, a little more than a handful. I'm going to do a session on PGP. If you were always afraid of it, you don't have to be afraid of it. There's a really good PGP for the Mac now. It's not spelled Symantec. It's actually open source, easy to use. I'll be teaching that tomorrow. And I guess that's it for us. We've got another speaker from IDG coming up. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.